Please, please, please. I would really appreciate that. Hey, do we just do screenshots for photos? So use the other. Oh yes, Quinn. There is an app that you can download to do actual captions from YouTube, but I'm not entirely sure. It depends on what model you guys have. I have a few moments to go live properly. I think James, can you keep an eye on the time, please? This has not been a good start of the day.
10-2.
Excellent. 10-2. Brilliant. But yes, if any of you guys can hear me or see me and everything, if you could say something. Hi, Rose. How are you? Hi, everybody. Hey, Mark and Sheila. Hi. I've been having a bit of a funny start of the day. Hey, Lance. Welcome, Charity. Welcome, welcome. I don't know if you guys saw my message when I was coming here, but the statue that we were gonna see today, it's been packed up. It's literally been up for like a week, and then there are just two container units, and they've just packed it up, and I am fuming because I was there yesterday, and I was like, don't mess me up like this. What's happening? So anyway, I'm improvising, so I'm not entirely sure what we're gonna see. We're in the park. Well, I have an idea of what I would like to see. Yes, I'm glad to have you here beyond Hago too, guys. This is honestly been a changing pace for everybody, but well, we're gonna try. Hey, Kirsty, how are you? Thank you so much for joining. Oh, well, I think I've decided that since we weren't far away from it, it's been the anniversary of the Titanic quite recently. And the last time I did the route that included the Titanic Memorial was when the Queen died. So it was a bit ominous and all that. And therefore, I think we're going to try and see that because, well, it's been the memorial recently. And, hopefully King Charles will not die today. Otherwise, I will consider myself somehow like a bad lucky charm. So yeah, that's what we're gonna go with. We're gonna have the spin around the park with the monuments that are here. So a little bit of changing plans, but there we go. And we have 9 minutes to go properly. So, this is gonna be a little bit of our recap, of our replay. And there you go. Oh, thank you so much, Lance. It's very kind of you. And thank you so much, guys, for making it, by the way. It's much appreciated. I have James here with me, by the way. Let me change the camera. For those of you who had the pleasure to see him getting drenched as a Roman reenactor last time. And this is James here just doing some support. So James is going to be walking around with me with his phone on so we can check how, from a user perspective, how YouTube is going as well. So, if you hear random sarcastic commentaries, that's James doing the thing there. And yes, of course, I can tell you some bits about me. So let me bring the gimbal back down to a place where you guys can see me, hopefully. There we go. So, what do you guys want to know about me? Hi, Lori. Thank you so much. Hope you're doing good. Don't worry, we still have about 8 minutes to go. So we're just waiting here, kind of like the preview from Heiko and other bits. But yes, so what can I tell you about me that you guys don't know already? Well, I don't know. Feel free to ask any questions, but for those of you who may not know who I am, although I'm confident you all know, I'm Dr. Lilian Cespedes Gonzalez. I have a PhD in history from the University of Winchester, where we're gonna go back next month. There are a couple of different tours and different platforms that I have planned for Winchester next month, but I'm planning on doing a Facebook Live this time for Winchester in May. Not entirely sure on what date just yet. I need to sort out my calendar for that one. Have you been King? Oh yeah, no worries. I'm so glad that you're here. What else can I tell you about me that you guys don't know or that may want to know? I don't know. I'm a little bit. No, don't worry, Lori. I understand. I understand with the typos. I'm used to it. I do it all the time, so it's not an issue. I've been living in Southampton now since 2017, so this is gonna be my, sixth year in a row living in Southampton. So Southampton is my adoptive city. I didn't move here originally, and for those, many of you would probably not know this, but I actually hated Southampton when I moved. We do still have very much a love-hate relationship, the city and I, to be very frank and very honest. But the more I've gotten to learn about it and do tours here, the more I've developed sympathy for Southampton, which is, I think, is necessary. We still aren't best friends, but we're in speaking terms. And well, Heiko literally closed down a year and a month after I started doing tours. So yes, it was for quite some time, I guess. We could say that. Yeah. I was recently, oh, good. Yeah, there's been we will talk about the Titanic today, Lori, since I had to change the preview for the tour. That's what we're gonna do. And I think we have, 4 minutes to go, James?
6.
6 minutes to go. I can't do maths, never mind. This is why I have someone else checking in for me. Some other things you guys may not know, the reason why I'm wearing gloves is not because it's cold, although it is cold. But I have a chronic illness. It's called fibromyalgia. If I don't wear these gloves, my hands go completely numb once I'm using the gimbal. As you can see, we have ridiculous wind that has just appeared now, because this is my luck. It was the very same thing. You guys know, it was the very same thing when I did my first Heiko tour. Wind just came out of nowhere. It took my hat away. It was hilarious. Well, I say hilarious, but never mind. It was funny for me at the time, just because I thought it was all gonna be so wrong. And then it started this wonderful journey. Oh, Laurie, I didn't know you did as well. I'm sorry that you're having to deal with this, but well, know that you're not the only one. So yeah, these are some random facts that we're doing just to warm up the room and warm up myself, because it was supposed to be 15 degrees when I came out. When I came out of the house, 15 degrees, nice sun. You can see vestiges of the sun right there. And now this wind is kind of making it feel like it's back to 10 degrees, because this is what happens when you live in coastal cities, guys. The wind can change at any moment, and here in the verge of the English Channel, it can be quite fierce. So there we go. And yeah, what else can I tell you to keep on warming the room up? Hello, everybody that just joined. By the way, I see that the numbers have gone up there. We have about 5 to 6 minutes to go, so we're just having a quick chit chat. Feel free to interact with the chat. Oh, nice, by the lake. Excellent. What else can I tell you? I came to UK in 2009. I'm originally from Spain, from Santander, which is, for those of you that know the bank, is where the bank originates from. But it's a lovely town. If we are lucky, I may be able to do a tour from Santander next week. Maybe. I'm making no promises. But we may be able to do that. And yeah, I came here to study at the university in Winchester. So I moved first to Winchester in 2009. And then I decided that I was going to be staying here for a little while. I stayed for my master's, then I started my PhD, and that's kind of how it all went. So I've been here now for, well, goodness, the best part of 14, 15 years, which seems like a really, really long time. I moved here when I was 18 on my own, and still on my own. All my family are back home, which is the reason why I'm going back home this Saturday to say hi and to see the new dog, which is trying to replace me. My parents have adopted a new dog who is becoming the favorite child very quickly, and I have to go back so they don't forget about me. So this is it. I will send you some pictures of the dog as well. And yes, some of my tours are already going onto YouTube. Some are, some others aren't. I only had so much stuff that I could download from Heiko, so I'm putting some of them up. I have also in the Buy Me a Coffee now, I've created replays that are purchasable for like £3 for things that I know people have been wanting to have on demand for quite some time. 3 minutes, good, excellent. So that's where the tours are gonna be going. And then of course, you guys know I'm in other platforms, so I'm already with World Virtual Tours, which I know some of you already follow. We're creating some new things from that perspective. And then I am launching, although I'm a bit skeptical about how these platforms are gonna go, with Discover Live and Beyond their public tours in May, literally on the 1st of May. But I don't know, we shall see. And then I have a couple more things coming up. I will be starting in June with Restless, which used to be Mirthy, and with Wowzitude. So if any of you have connections to these platforms, there you go. Well, you know, the thing is, it's a very cute dog, guys. You know, it's a 3-year-old puppy of a border collie mixed with something else, and he's so hyperactive and charming. It's absolutely adorable and a little bit daft. So you know, it's perfect for my parents. My mom was like, oh, we're never gonna have a dog after, unfortunately, our other dog died during the pandemic. And I think after 2 years of grieving, now she's 100% on board with this, and the dog is her baby. It's honestly quite sickening at stages. she treats him better than she treats me and my sister. But you know, this is the thing. I don't blame them. I'm sure that my sister and I gave them a lot of grief. I've planned dedicated, yes, I actually have just started, Gregory, a brand new channel on YouTube for fibromyalgia. It is called Fibromyalgia and Kindness. It is, if you are in the group for Travolution, for history and culture with Lily in Facebook, there are a couple of links there, and there are a couple of links as well in my actual personal Facebook page. But if you go onto YouTube and look at Fibromyalgia and Kindness, then you will be finding, I think now, 10 videos, some of which will also include some Hager replays from the sessions that we had. Hi Mike, thank you so much for joining us. And yes, Laurie, I think you may appreciate it. I'm also doing a fundraiser that starts as of the 1st of May. So there we go. And it's officially time to start, guys. So enough chattering. Let's change the chattering to something else. Excellent. Well, hi everybody. For those of you who were not here during the hangout, my name is Lily. I'm a tour guide here in the south of England and a historian. I have a PhD. For those of you interested in my full doctoral name is Dr. Lilian Céspedes González, which is long and nasty, so just go with Lily. And we've had a change of plans because such is my luck. As you would know if you've been following me in other platforms for a while, I'm the luckiest tour guide. All sorts of stupid things happen when I'm trying to do these things. But anyway, we were gonna see a brand new statue that had actually just been put up last week here in Southampton in honor of the war in Ukraine. Unfortunately, this morning it started to be packed up. They're moving it somewhere else, and there is literally just 2 containers in there, so we can't see the statue. So thinking very quickly on my feet, hey Leanne, thank you so much for being here. We decided that we were gonna come to the park and we were gonna show you some of the monuments here. Since the light is actually quite nice too, then that would be nice. The other reason why I decided to do the park is because the last time I tried to do this tour, it was pouring with rain. It was awful. I think Gregory may have been in here for that one. And the Queen died that day. So I'm hoping that there is no casualties and that everything goes smoothly as possible. On the other hand, I have James walking with me as support. He's gonna be checking the quality of YouTube on his phone because, as you know, we don't really have any way of testing YouTube in the same way that we've had with some other platforms. So, you know, we're gonna be looking at how this is going. If the, you know, things go well, I'll keep on doing this on YouTube and on Facebook Live. Otherwise, we'll figure it out. Well, I would love to take you to the art gallery here, Lance, but unfortunately, the art gallery here in Southampton closes at 3 p.m. So it's already closed, which is a disaster. In any case, let's start here in the actual park. Let me turn around the camera and sort out the gimbal, and here we go. Yes, hopefully, James, hopefully. Okay, right, so we are here in the rather large park in Southampton city centre. This park actually surrounds the entirety of the city center, and it's honestly a lifesaver, particularly now that the weather is changing so drastically in the UK, and we have these random heat waves that take us to the 30 and 40 degrees Celsius, which is, not something I ever thought I would have to endure in my lifetime in Southampton. And as you can see, although very late, spring has finally arrived to Southampton. I thought you would love to see some nice flowers, because everything that we've seen so far has been grey and miserable. So here I have some flowers from the UK. I was so happy to see some greenery and some color. Yes, it is looking rather charming and rather nice. And this park will look at its best actually in the next couple of months. June is probably the best time of the year. But as you can see, some of the trees are still looking a little bit confused as to what season of the year it is. But spring has officially arrived to the UK. Hello everybody that just joined us. Thank you so much for being here. Well, this park actually is a relatively recent addition to Southampton itself. It was only commissioned in the 19th century. Prior to that, everything that you see here was essentially just grassland for farming. So it was in the 19th century, thanks to the environmental revolution that was happening in the United States and in the UK, that the mayor of Southampton decided to commission the actual landscaping of this area as an actual park. It is a rather nice day, except for the wind, but otherwise it's pretty good. And we have actually a monument here to the mayor of Southampton that actually gave us this lovely park. But unfortunately, it's the most underwhelming monument in the history of mankind. This is it. This little pillar that you see here, it's our monument to Sir Frederick Perkins during his mayoralty of 1862. I know. We do have this thing in Southampton where our monuments aren't always hitting the mark, but I like to highlight them anyway because, well, even though it may not be pretty, it is still important. And what it's pointing at is this line of trees that it's just over here, starting with this one right in front of us now. He commissioned the landscaping of the entire park for Southampton, but this specific line of trees was built in his honor just a few years afterwards. So what kind of trees and whatnot do we have here in the park? Well, some of them are local species to the UK. We have a couple of oaks and yew trees, but the majority of the plants that you're going to be seeing here are a mixed mash. And the reason for that is because during this wave of environmentalism in the 19th century, this also coincides with the period of the empire. And during this moment in time, there is a general desire for exoticism in the UK and throughout the colonies. So there will be some trees and some species of plants that you will see here that are obviously not native, like some little palm trees that we're going to be seeing in just a moment. And that's the reason why it's quite a peculiar park. Well, overall, this was a way of essentially giving Southampton, which was becoming a very industrial city, a green lung to purify the air. And this is something that it's still very much important in our time currently. Southampton is a city that is incredibly polluted. Our body of water, the Southampton Solent, is actually one of the most polluted areas in the UK. And as a result, the park really is the only thing that we have that resembles this kind of greenery and healthy landscapes that we hope to have in most towns, not just in the UK, but throughout the world. So as you can see, some little palm trees here, a few more shrubberies there. And our first stop is going to be actually the statue of the man that actually promotes one of the most important industries in Southampton that make the need for this park so desirable. So this is Richard Andrews here on the pedestal, and he's a local hero that is not very spoken about, so I thought I would share that with you guys today. So after his name, the park is known by some people as Andrews Park or East Park, depending on who you ask. There is a lot of issues in Southampton as to how we call our park because, since it covers a great part of the city centre, different people call it different things. This part of the park supposedly is Andrews Park because of the statue. And Richard Andrews is important to us because you see the building right behind him, that big tower, that is actually taking us into the area of Bedford Place, which during the 19th century will become one of the most important industrial estates in Southampton itself. The thing that Richard Andrews did for us would revolutionize not just Southampton itself, but actually the whole coaching industry in the UK and in Europe. And I'll explain in a moment what I mean by this. Let me just give us a better angle there, probably a nice picture. Well, Richard Andrews was born in 1798, and he will die in 1859, if I remember correctly. And what he actually does is he realizes that there is a huge need here in Southampton and in general in the south of England to promote the coach tourism industry. So just like today you are performing a little bit of virtual tourism with me, back in the 19th century it was very common for people to come normally from different parts of the country, particularly London and farther up north, to to essentially enjoy the seaside. As a result, Southampton becomes one of those destinations because we're right by the water. But you know, traveling by coach is actually quite difficult and quite inconvenient at the best of times. And he thinks that there is a way that this must be improved. So he decides that he's going to throw a lot of money into this particular industry, and the area of Bedford Place will become what we call a working colony. I think in the United States the term is something like a mill village or something like that, which essentially meant there were people being taken over to that part of town with new housing being created, the warehouses being put in there so that the workers would be able to go to work in the same place where they lived. And all of this was to improve the way those coaches were. And for those of you who are perhaps not familiar with the idea, these coaches were essentially horse carriages that were just transporting people. So it is thanks to him, to Richard Andrews, that we will get better, faster, more comfortable coaches and with more luggage capacity. And as a result, the coaching industry overall gets transformed, like I said, not just for Southampton, but for the whole of the UK and Europe. So that's why we dedicate the park to this lovely gentleman. Well, we're now gonna move to the memorial fountain just over there, but I've just realized there's still some daffodils alive. So let's go have a look at some of these daffodils. We have different kinds of daffodils here in Southampton. We have these ones which are a little bit more pale, and the ones that are, you know, your typical yellow ones. But as you can see, they are working on the landscaping of the park, so the yellow ones are missing. They've been replaced recently. There's been quite a lot of, you know, sudden wind and storms in here, so the landscaping team for Southampton City Council has been working quite hard on our green spaces to make them a bit more, well, you know, likable essentially. But they have a lot of areas to cover, not just this park, but also the Southampton Common Park, of which we will be doing a tour in the future, and you can see a replay from the day that James and I got completely drenched on YouTube already, which is, you know, a 365 hectare park, and therefore it takes a lot of resources from them. So this is the Queen's Peace Fountain. You have the details here, and this was actually put in there for one of her memorials, the Golden Jubilee, if I remember correctly. This obviously was quite momentous. The last time I did this tour, the Queen actually died, so I remember we were all looking at this fountain with a rather different feeling than what I suspect most of us will have now. But you know, it's still quite topical, speaking about the Queen in the UK, because as you probably know, we have the coronation of King Charles coming up real soon, in literally the next couple of weeks. So the UK is gonna be, well, dressing royal one more time to commemorate the monarchy. Let me just, I can see a couple of messages have come. I saw the tour felt so well, but you know, Rose, it was actually quite fun in some ways. I think, I mean, it wasn't fun for James, who is now here behind me, looking at me like, yeah, it was fun for you, who was not getting soaked, unlike me. But yeah, there you go. But well, you know, it was interesting. And at the same time, one of the reasons why I really wanted to showcase that day and why we didn't really want to stop doing that on the day is because sometimes when you come out touring, you know, things happen. We don't control the weather. I wish we did, honestly. Every day I would go on tour, it would be a nice mild temperature. You know, it would be suitable for pictures and all that stuff. But unfortunately, you just can't take it for granted. And I always say to people, you know, the weather doesn't care whether you're traveling or whether you're having a quiet day at home. So you can either resent it or you can just work with it. Again, I'm just gonna come here so you can see some of our lovely plants that are coming through in this spring weather finally arriving in the UK. I have no idea what these are. Some of you that know me from other platforms will know that I suck at anything that is related to plant knowledge, which is a real shame because my grandma actually was a florist for many years. So I probably should know better, but I think this may be snowdrops. Maybe, I don't know, don't quote me on that one. If any of you actually knows what these are, please let me know because I would love to learn. But yes, and you can call me either way. It's Lily normally what everyone calls me, so either way is fine. And I am quite flexible on that front. Well, we're now gonna be walking towards the Titanic Memorial, which is what I really wanted to show you today, since you know the memorial has literally just been a couple of days ago. But since we're here, I will also like to show you this tiny bit of landscaping which ties in with that environmentalism and, you know, exotic Orientalism that got developed during the empire in the 19th century, which is our Zen garden. Now, the Zen garden here in Southampton is inspired by, well, essentially Japanese and Chinese traditions of, well, relaxation and contemplation. I don't know if you can see much of that Asian influence in here, but that is what this space is supposedly trying to achieve. Now, the other reason why they decided to create this space, which is a little bit further away from the main area of the park, is for the sake of promoting local wildlife. We do have local wildlife in our cities, you know, whether it's little rodents or little reptiles, they do matter. They are important, and by making sure that these little spaces are still available to them, we are creating that biodiversity, which is important. Is anyone else's screen a little bit blurry? Well, let me know, because obviously what I'm seeing on my screen may not be what it's coming on your guys' screen. So keep me posted. Everything seems good here, but it would be good to hear a little bit of feedback. Yes, as in blurry. Okay, well, we're moving now in any case, so hopefully that will fix that now. This is the other side of the Zen garden, and now we're just getting to the back of the Titanic Memorial, so bear with me. The Titanic Memorial is right next to one of the main roads, so I may need to reposition myself if a big bus comes behind me, because we have a bus stop literally right next to us, but hopefully that should be fairly easy. All right, no worries. Excellent. Well, maybe this will be a nice shot. That's the other entrance to the Zen garden with the alpine plants. That's the vast majority of the things that they've planted in there. The shrubbery, they are all plants from alpine regions, even though they are not typical of the UK necessarily speaking. They are quite suitable for this kind of, you know, well, the typical British weather of grey, cold, etc., etc. Right, okay. Now, before I show you the Titanic Memorial, I would like to show you something here, which is actually on the pathway. I'm going to be pointing at the floor, not to be rude, but because there are some teeny tiny mosaics that are created by a local artist to embellish different public pathways here in Southampton. So we have a few of them. Let me pick the best ones. This one is quite a popular one. We have another one here with the legacy of Southampton as a shipping industry. We have this one with the actual emblem of the city. There we go. So these are, like I said, randomly just located here. Most people don't notice them because, you know, you actually have to be looking at the floor to see them. But this is how it's going. James, can you give me a live reading on your YouTube? How are things?
Little bit blurry, but I lost signal. Just literally at this, I'm just trying to catch up.
You've lost signal.
No, I mean, I'm back now.
Okay,
fine.
my
whole.
Oh, your network dropped. Okay, fair enough. There we go. Right. Well, let's let's move on and let's get over here. Okay, see, this is the only issue here with YouTube. For example, on Heygo, we had, an app that actually told us what the signal strength is. All I have in here is literally just my actual signal from my phone, which is actually giving me readings of 4G. So other than that, I have no idea what to expect. Well, in any case, here we are at the Titanic Memorial, which is one of the most important monuments we have here in the city. I'm just gonna get up the stairs so I can give you a better shot. And as you can see, there are some flowers that have been left in here because, well, of course, the departure of the Titanic happened on the 15th of April, and that's been literally 4 days ago. Today is the 19th, yes, 4 days ago. So as much as this tragedy obviously was over 100 years ago, it still affects the community. It's still super important for the inhabitants of Southampton, and that's what I would like to tell you about today. But before that, let me show you the actual memorial itself, because I think it's quite beautiful. So everything that we have here is built in granite and in bronze, which is, well, quite convenient because almost every other monument in town is done on some kind of limestone, and with the rain and wind, it tends to deteriorate quite quickly. But this was actually all done by a Swiss designer right after the Titanic tragedy happened. It had been commissioned and then it was completely built by 1914. So literally just took 2 years from the disaster. And what you see here are, well, two main figures really. You will see this man with the mustache moving around these kind of gears, and the same on the other side. There we go. This is supposed to be Chief Engineer Joseph Bell, who was, essentially the man running the ship. Without him, well, the ship wasn't gonna go very far. And overall here we have this depiction of the goddess Nike, or Nike, depending on which way you want to pronounce it, from ancient Greek, which is traditionally associated as the goddess of victory, and normally because of that associated with the goddess Athena as well. You're probably wondering, why do we have the goddess of victory here in a memorial where so many people died? Well, this is essentially a way of rising up from the ashes. It may have been, a nasty situation, but Southampton prevailed, Southampton survived. And as a result, victory is what came from it, from the survivors, more than anything else. Well, now for those of you who may not be familiar with the Titanic, let me explain while I show you the names here on the wall. By the way, this monument and the names you're gonna be seeing is specifically dedicated to the engineers. So we're not talking of all of the victims of the Titanic. It's purely for the engineers in this specific case. As you can see, we have the name there of Mr. Joseph Bell, Chief Engineer. But the reason why it's the engineers is because they were actually, the majority of them were here from Southampton, and so was the crew. So there are many different memorials throughout the city dedicated to the Titanic. And this is the most important because of the way it affected. I seen a message coming through. Restream, interesting. Okay, I'll keep that in mind. I didn't know about that. I'll have a look. Brilliant. Well, you're probably wondering, why did the vast majority of the people that run the ship came actually from Southampton? Well, what a lot of people don't know is that actually, although the ship was built in Belfast, there was actually a small fire right before the Titanic departed inside the ship. Now, I don't know if you guys are actually familiar at all with people that work at sea or that people would work at boats, but despite modern day technology, they are very superstitious people. Having been brought up in a in a coastal town and then moving to another one, I am very, very used to that kind. I'm just gonna let this ambulance pass. So I'm sure you can hear me fine, but I can't hear myself. So despite the technology, it was perceived that a fire in the ship before it departed on its maiden voyage, it was just bad news, really bad news. And as a result, well, there was actually a general dropout of the jobs in en masse. Only the high-ranking officers of the Titanic decided to stay to to actually perform their duty. So that actually meant that the Titanic sailed with a skeleton crew of about 10% from Belfast to Southampton, meaning that once they got here, they needed to recruit en masse. I'm just gonna come down the steps here so I can give you a front view of the Titanic. So bear with me for a second while I get around the monument. Right. Excellent. So as a result, the White Star Company, which is, you know, the people who were running not just the Titanic but a few other ocean liners such as the Olympia, they had their HQ here in Southampton in Ocean Village, which, if you've not been to Ocean Village before with me on other platforms, there will be a replay going up in somewhere at some point, and we will be going back there too. Well, as they already had books of people that had worked with them beforehand, they essentially just pulled from the books and then just opened recruitment to anyone that was available. Well, the area of Ocean Village is closest to the neighborhood of St. Mary's, which is actually just at the back end of this park. And St. Mary's is traditionally the poorest part of town. It's where the vast majority of sailors and people that work at sea and normally on quite a low income used to live, because, well, you know, sanitation and the general development of that part of the city had always been a little bit far behind from the rest of the city center. So the majority of people in St. Mary's and in the closer neighborhoods to the port ended up enlisting for jobs in the Titanic, because for them even a job as a maid or as a steward was actually quite profitable. Just so you get an idea of how much people got paid on board of the Titanic, Chief Engineer Bell, here depicted in the bronze, earned a monthly salary of about £46, which I know probably for us is not a lot of money in this day and age, but you need to consider that £46 back then actually meant that Mr. Bell could live a very nice, comfortable life here in Southampton with his wife and the rest of his family. He would probably have been considered, you know, high middle class, almost going on to rich people. The rest of the officers, the rest of his engineers would have earned anything between 12 to 30 pounds per month, which is still a very nice salary. And then we have people, you know, who are from the lower categories of the work chain, such as the maids, the firemen, who are the people that actually feed fire to the engine, not put the fire out. Those people would earn as little as 20 pence per month. However, I can guarantee you that those 20 pence per month on a, you know, nice cruise ship like the Titanic, which was supposed to be at sea for the best part of half a year, was steady, reliable income. And with that steady, reliable income, people could make a living. So it was worth the while. Now, of course, no one could have foreseen what was going to happen, which was the fact that the Titanic would unfortunately encounter an iceberg, and that would mean that the ship will go down. Well, these things unfortunately happen in life. But that is the reason why when the Titanic sinks, the majority of the people that die will actually be members of the crew. You know, out of the just over 2,000 people that there was on the Titanic, including passengers and crew, the majority of the people that die, which is just under half of that, will be members of the crew. And of the total casualties, 594 people would be members of the community here in Southampton. They would be Soutonians. And that's the reason why the memorial still has flowers, and the reason why people, as you can see, keep on coming back. Because there are grandchildren and great-grandchildren who remember or have been told stories of how this affected their family. You know, you need to consider that when this happened, it was said that one person in every single street had been lost on board of the Titanic. And when I mean one person, normally is a man of working age here in Southampton, which means this town becomes, essentially a city of widows and orphans. So it was a really hard tragedy, which is followed up 2 years later by the First World War. So the trauma of Southampton overall is still very much alive because of this. Well, speaking of trauma and speaking of the war, we're gonna leave the Titanic behind and we're gonna actually visit the War Memorial. But I hope that's kind of helped putting some things in perspective about the Titanic itself, just so you can understand, you know, how this has happened. Yes, that's it. The coal beans. That's what the firemen were actually working with. And you know, it's quite controversial. We are actually working on reframing the firemen as firemen, because for a really long time they were actually called the Black Gang because of the amount of sweat and coal dust that they were constantly, you know, exposed to. They were always quite filthy. Now obviously because of that, it has quite a strong racial connotation. It's been used as a slur before, and in order to sanitize language and in general, you know, our heritage, it's important that we move away from terms that, although may have been historically okay back then, are definitely not historically okay now. So if you are actually familiar with this term, I will encourage you to actually rephrase it and reframe it now as the firemen, which is at the end of the day what their actual title was. Well, we're now here at the War Memorial. This is now both the First and Second World War Memorial, as it happens normally in most places. Both of them get, you know, joined. And yes, JV, it's been honestly quite the last 200 years for Southampton haven't been particularly pretty. Well, as you can see, this is quite a different war memorial, and that's entirely the point. The architect, Sir Edwin Lutyens, I will get a little bit closer so you can see some of the features, actually wanted to change the way war memorials were done. He thought that up until that moment in time, most war memorials were depictions of violence and, you know, strong men with guns, which is, well, not something that really applies to the First World War, where so many people were dying in such cruel ways. So he decides this memorial is going to beautify that self-sacrifice that all the people gave for their countries, you know, regardless of who they were fighting for. And this was going to be for everybody. No religious symbols, no racial connotations, etc., etc. I'm sure that you've caught on the fact that I said no religious symbols, and now you're seeing this huge cross just over there. Well, there is a not very funny story about this, but as such, it is the story that I have to tell you today. Before I do that, though, I would like to show you one of the most recent plaques that has been added into the memorial, which is this commemoration for Commander Daniel Beake of the Royal Naval Volunteer Reserve, who was actually here from the town. Well, as I've said, this man, Edwin Lutyens, actually wanted the memorial to be for everybody, because, you know, at this moment in time, the UK had still an empire running, and in that empire there were people from many different nations, many different cultures, many different religions, who were all affected. Well, unfortunately for us, the city of Southampton decided that they had spent a vast part of £10,000 in the memorial as of 1918, the year where the armistice is actually signed, and that they would do with the memorial what they wanted, which was putting that huge cross that you see there. And the reason why these panels are actually up now. These panels are very useful. They contain now every single name for the people from Southampton that died during the war. And I don't know if you can see, some of them even have little QR codes. So if you have a smartphone, you can come and read it and actually find out who, for example, I don't know, Halford Walter Norman may have been. But, well, these were only installed in 2010, and the reason for that was not just to preserve the monument, because as you can see, as I'll show you just now, that the names are quite badly damaged, but because once the memorial actually went up, every single Jewish name was actually removed. So let me show you the state and condition of the names here on the wall. As you can see, some of them are in better state than others, and this goes all the way up, by the way. Let me just point the gimbal a little bit farther up, all the way up to the actual base of the sarcophagus that is in there, because this is all limestone. This is a Portland stone, which comes from, you know, the area of Dorset. It's beautiful because it's white and, you know, charming on a nice sunny day, but being limestone in any case, with the wind and the rain, it gets quite severely damaged. And of course we have a serious problem here with pigeons and starlings that keep on nesting here, and their detritus is unfortunately quite corrosive. Well, just so you can get an idea of the impact of the erasure of the Jewish community that this had here in Southampton, 1 in 10 people from Southampton that fought in the First World War were actually Jewish. So we're talking of relatively big numbers. When in 2010 they decided to put the plaques up, they decided to well, quote unquote, fix this mistake, this erasure, and include all of those names, of course, alongside with people who had been forgotten, not on purpose, but because, sometimes we unfortunately don't find all of the remains at once, or all the records are not always processed accordingly. So a lot of people, particularly people that were in trenches and that, would have died in quite a horrible situation, were not accounted for. So these panels kind of help bringing them back to light, as well as rectifying the erasure of the Jewish community. But by then it was too late. Southampton actually had one of the most important Jewish communities in the south of England. We have in the University of Southampton one of the largest archives for Jewish history in the whole of the UK and part of Europe. And as a result, well, they decided that this was too much of an affront, of an grievance, and the vast majority of them have now moved on towards the area of the New Forest, which is between Southampton and Bournemouth. I think last time I spoke with the rabbi that comes here, we don't even have a proper temple in Southampton anymore. It's more like a small congregation that comes together as of when, and they don't even have more than 1,000 active members, the majority of which are quite elderly. So as you can see, the damage caused was quite severe. Well, this is the unfortunate truth of the war, though, guys. Just because it's a war memorial and it actually helps us remember nasty things that happened in the past that we should try and rectify, it doesn't always mean that it's pretty or neat from that perspective. And in fact, most war memorials and most memorials of any political characteristic, they always have a hidden agenda. So if you know of any memorials that look maybe a bit interesting to you, or that you don't entirely know what they may be about, always be cautious of the message that goes behind it, because sometimes it's there is hidden history like that. Well, since I don't like ending things on a nasty note, as you guys probably know, we're gonna get close to an unsung hero of Southampton, which I actually have a lot of respect for, even though I'm not a particularly religious person. But I think what he did for people is actually quite nice. So we're gonna end here with Isaac Watts, and I'll show you as well some of the nice flowers that are starting to come through. The area around the statue of Isaac Watts is always made very pretty, because he is the man that, well, in many ways changed liturgy for this country and mathematics. So I'll explain that in just a moment, but here, take the flowers in, because I'm gonna have to go to the shade as well, and from there we're not gonna be able to see the flowers so well. And normally in the later stages of spring we have proper nice bright flowers that come all through here, and that actually make this quite a lovely sight. Okay, well, here we have, and there is always, you know what, if you guys have ever done this tour with me before or started the tour here, I'm sure you all have had the chance to actually have a postcard with the statue and a seagull. I don't know why, but this statue is a seagull magnet, and James can vouch for me because he's done some tours of Southampton as well, and there always seems to be a seagull on top of the statue. But anyway, what is the deal with Isaac Watts? Well, let me just catch up with the chat very quickly. We had Colston statue knock off on Bristol. Really? No way. That's so sad. I like that all the names. Yes, honestly, Rose, it's super important from that perspective, because I mean, we can talk about erasure and heritage and communities all day long, but particularly the erasure of the Jewish community throughout Europe and the world is been severe enough that it shouldn't have to be like this anymore, particularly when we know what we've done. But well, anyway, Isaac Watts was a model citizen of Southampton, although, well, he actually didn't spend the vast majority of his life here. He lived in London throughout most of it, but because he was born with a chronic illness of which we don't really have a lot of records of, he kept on coming back here for health. The park, not so much then, because it wasn't built at the time of Isaac's life. He corresponds to the 17th and 18th century, but the greenery around Southampton overall and the water was perceived to be healthier than the London smoke. He was working in London as a priest, as a preacher, and in fact here in the bottom of the statue you can see different panels explaining different aspects of his life. So this is him working in the parish of St. Mary's with the children and explaining liturgy and religion. And then on the other side, we actually have the thing that he becomes famous for. Now, I bet that most of you in chat currently, and for those of you watching this at home later, you all have heard or even sang at some point the song Joy to the World. Probably maybe even during Christmas, na 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 na. That one. Well, if you've ever heard it or sang it, you owe it to this man. Because it was him, the one that wrote it, alongside with another 400 hymns, which actually makes him the English writer with the largest number of hymns written in history. That means that he's a more prolific English writer in terms of hymns than even Wesley. And not a lot of people know this because he did everything very much low-key and without wanting any kind of recognition. And there is a very important reason for that. We will actually turn around in the statue around it, just so you can see the rest of it, and then I'll come back to the front. So, like I said, Isaac Watts was actually born in the 17th century. He's actually born in 1674, and the very, very same day that he died, his father was actually in prison by the waterfront in what is currently Godhouse Tower for religious dissidents. Now, what does that mean? It means that Isaac Watts' father was a member of society that did not comply with the official religion of the state. Since we're here, I'm gonna give you this nice look at these flowers, which I hadn't noticed as we were coming in here, and they kind of look different from everywhere else. So there we go. It is very much a matter of what counts as religious dissidents. Well, I'll explain. The seagull good. Yes, 400 hymns is really quite a lot, isn't it? Well, religious dissidents at that moment in time in the UK catches us in the middle of the wars of religion. The wars of religion have technically finished in the rest of Europe throughout the 16th century, but here in England, because of the changes in our monarchy, we keep on coming back, from Catholicism to Protestantism, and even once it is just Protestantism, what kind of Protestantism? Are you a nice Christian Anglican? Are you one of those Anabaptists, Baptists, Methodists, etc., or independents? Well, it is actually one of those independent churches that his father was part of, and he actually genuinely believed that anybody ought to have the right to choose what branch of religion or what religion they should be part of. Religion and creed in this day and age is protected under most human rights actions, but back then it was not the case. So because he was not officially a registered Anglican Christian, as the state made it be so in the day, he ended up imprisoned for religious dissidents quite a few times. This meant that Isaac Watts was very aware from a very young age that, not complying and believing in something that is slightly different than what everyone else believes in could actually get you in trouble. And that seems to be something that really marked him, and potentially one of the reasons why he becomes a preacher, because he wanted people to be able to get close to God whichever way he could help them with. Well, in his hymn writing, he decides that he's gonna make hymns easier for everyone to be able to take part in Mass, because up until that moment in time, the majority of hymns were actually written with quite archaic language. He decides that it's much easier for people to contribute and sing if these hymns are written with the language of the New Testament, which is a bit easier going and a bit more friendly. And by doing so, well, suddenly church participation increases, and at the same time, he was offering something super important for people like his father, but that maybe were not as brave as his father, because there were a lot of people who were living, under these circumstances of so-called religious dissidents, but they were not necessarily, speaking about it out loud, unlike his dad. So what happened to those people who were, potentially independent churchgoers, but didn't want to make it public? They needed somewhere to not necessarily hide, but to be and to live protected within the existing communities. So if those people go to church and sing the hymns like everyone else, they could still have a chance of being part of the community, of being part of society, of not being, looked down on, and still be able to congregate and communicate with their Creator, which is such a blessing. And he did that unknowingly. It is a very kind thing to do, for which he asked essentially for no credits. It is a lovely Christmas carol, and now hopefully you know him and what he did. I think it's even more impressive when you understand, what he was actually all about. There is one more achievement that I would like to tell you, which is on this other side of the statue. I'm gonna see if the light doesn't blind us, because as you see him here, he's in a very different setting. He's surrounded by books with a telescope and a mappa mundi, and you're probably wondering, well, what does a priest, a theologian, as he actually was, have to do with any of this? Well, on top of all of that, on top of all of the lovely things he did for the religious community, Isaac Watts was also a mathematician. He actually was heavily inspired and seemingly in good working relationship with the empiricist John Locke, and he actually created a very important treatise in logic that will actually change the way mathematics are actually applied here in the UK. So if any of you have studied in the UK, or anyone here, a lot of the maths and way maths is taught in this country, even to this day and age, are owed to the changes that this man does in the 17th and 18th century, which is quite impressive if you think about it. And again, all of this, whether it was mathematics, whether it was helping the community or preaching to his local parish, it was all something that he did literally for the benefit of the community. He never really asked for much recognition. He never really cared in that sense. He just wanted to do good. And I genuinely think if we all could be a bit more like that, we could think about how we can do good, whether it's for appreciation or otherwise, then the world would be a much better place, and things like what happened in the War Memorial or with the Titanic maybe could be avoided to some extent. And that is gonna be all we have time for today, guys, which I think is probably quite enough for our first spin around the park. So here is James still checking everything on his end. I can see that he's dropped a couple of messages as well on chat. So that's all for now. I hope that's been somehow enlightening. No casualties this time. I'm so glad, because that was honestly such a downer when we were touring and suddenly we all found out that the Queen had died. It was quite a sad time, and I genuinely got put off from doing this tour again because of that. So I'm glad that we've done it today in this way. I'm sorry that I couldn't show you the statue that I wanted to, but well, apparently we are only gonna show our support to Ukraine for a week. But there we go. So thank you so much for being here. I think I've pinned it on the top of the tour. That is my Buy Me a Coffee. I also have PayPal, which is just paypal.me/Travolution Tours. And in fact, I can not type it because it will not let me type it. But anyway, it is on all of my social media and whatnot. And for those of you who have been asking for replays because you're on different time zones or whatever from previous Hago tours, on my Buy Me a Coffee on the shop now, there is different tours from Southampton, from Winchester. One of the lectures that I was only able to do once, which was the collaboration with Jeannie and with Andrea Nevia on the history of music. And I am about to upload, when I get home, the replay there for the Great Hall and for Seville, which I'm sure many of you didn't see because that was very early on my Hago days and I probably didn't know you back then. So this is all for today. Those of you who were asking about fibromyalgia, like I said, I have now a dedicated YouTube channel called Fibromyalgia and Kindness, and you can find that as well on the group on Facebook. But that's all for our YouTube adventure for now. Thank you so much for having been here. Thank you so much, everyone talking on the chat. And I will see you again sometime soon. Hopefully, if you can make it to my talk on the 30th of May. That is a private Hago family only kind of deal for this super produced documentary-like tour that I've done with an audiovisual artist. So hopefully I'll see you there, and if not, I will see you at some other point. Take care, guys. Thank you so much for coming here, and see you later. And hopefully I'll be able to finish this because I know John was having problems ending the stream. So let's see if I can do this properly. Nope. Yep, there you go. We're stopping the stream now. Thank you so much, guys. See you later. Bye.